Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel. Airports. Tyler Bond hated them. They were a necessary evil in his job, but he hated them. They harmed his marriage. They were filled with crowds of people waiting to be sent through the air to their destinations, like cattle, and they would be treated like cattle. Maybe he should rethink his attitude and just accept things as they are, and he was well paid to endure it. 10 years ago, he had to stand in line for check-in, then stand in line for security, and then stand in line for boarding the plane, where you would have to stand in line again, waiting for those ahead of you to put away their luggage in the overhead bins, as the line slowly moved towards your seat in the back of the plane. Now he didn't have to talk to anyone if he didn't want to. As an experienced traveler, his luggage was no longer checked. TSA pre-check drastically reduced waiting times at security in most airports. His years of cross-country travel once a month, plus an additional shorter trip every month, had solidified his status with his favorite airlines, where he no longer had to sit in the back of the plane and could board after first-class passengers. His credit card even gave him access to the lounge, which was quite pleasant there at Miami Airport. Although the experience was much better now, he still didn't like it. However, today in the lounge, Veronica, an attractive middle-aged woman who looked a few years younger than him, dressed in a ruffled dress with a deep neckline partially covered by a cardigan, was chatting with him about her recent travels. Near the end of the conversation, she allowed her cardigan to cover less. He was drooling. He also happily and candidly shared his own stories about travel and the war, and at the end of their conversation, she handed him her business card. He glanced at the card briefly, not wanting to take his eyes off Veronica, and discovered that she was also from Denver, which led to a few more minutes of conversation. She had one more stop to make before heading home. Perhaps that was for the best. After a pleasant chat, they parted ways to their respective gates. Was she flirting with him? Maybe. Possibly. He regretted not realizing it while they were talking. Decades of marriage had dulled his sense of flirting. Damn. Not that anything could or should come of it. He had been 100% faithful during his 26 years of marriage and had no intention of changing that. This was one of his cross-country trips, and despite his dislike of airports, he was in a good mood because of his conversation with Veronica and some success on his trip, which would lead to an additional bonus next quarter. He had just sat down in his more spacious economy plus seat to return home when his phone rang. He was about to switch it to airplane mode when it happened. It was his wife, Rebecca. Sigh. It was very early in Denver for her to be awake, let alone calling. Given the early hour, he wondered if it was important. Maybe. His finger hovered over the phone to answer, but he turned it off instead. If it had been one of his kids, he would have answered, of course, but whatever his wife, the bat, wanted could wait. He acknowledged that the travel that began 10 years ago, though limited, had been tough on them, but it shouldn't have caused so many arguments. He was rarely away for more than 6 nights a month, but it seemed to be too much. Women. He wished his wife were more understanding. When he told her about the new position many years ago and the increased salary and bonuses, his wife practically pushed him out the door, then welcomed him and his money home with open arms and legs. Now, despite his attempts to treat her to wine and dinner more often and spend more time with her, she had become distant. Recently, his boss told him that if he agreed to a new position that required more travel, he could earn even more money. He hadn't mentioned this offer to his wife. It wouldn't have served any good purpose. The whole situation saddened him, but he had his children, who were fantastic. He loved his children. His daughter Jamie had just started pharmacy school in the fall, and his son Mike was attending summer school to get a head start on his first year of engineering, just like his father. Both parents were, as expected, proud. He missed attending their events and missed them being underfoot. He guessed Rebecca felt the same way since she seemed sad lately. Despite their current problems, they had raised 2 exceptional children. Smart, cheerful, hardworking, selfless, with a sense of humor. Over the years, they had received many additional joys. He wanted to see them more often. Since the children now had their own homes nearby, he thought about downsizing their large house. Rebecca didn't want to hear about it. In addition to her job at the hospital as one of their financial managers, she was a member of several charity boards, and the house, neighborhood, and neighbors suited her image. The slight additional upkeep of the house and yard compared to a smaller home was one of the sacrifices Tyler had to make for his wife's social standing. Sigh. The flight was tedious, as it often was, or rather, he was tired from the long flight. He wasn't in the mood to watch a movie, and he had barely slept during the trip, so he decided to close his eyes for a few minutes. He was awakened by the sound of landing. He was surprised that he had slept through almost the entire trip. He turned his phone back on, and it looked like something had exploded. Voicemails and messages from everyone close to him. He called his daughter. "Oh my God, Dad. Thank God you called." "Jamie, you knew I was on the plane. What's going on? Everyone tried to reach me, but no one told me anything." "Well, I'm not going to say anything right now. Come by my place since it's on the way home. Mike will be here too." "Jamie, you can't leave me hanging like this. Are you and your brother okay? Is your mom okay? Has anyone been hurt?" "I'm sorry, Daddy. It's just a big mess. No one's hurt. Well, none of our loved ones. I'll explain everything when we see each other." What the hell? Tyler made it from Denver International Airport to his daughter's house near the university in record time. He knocked on the door hastily, and she was almost in tears when he came in. He saw his son, sitting solemnly in a chair. "What happened, honey?" "Oh, Daddy, we're so sorry. It's a huge mess." Mike spoke up. "It's like a big bazaar." "Tell me what happened." Jamie continued. "We didn't want any of this to happen. It's just like a snowball." "What exactly didn't you want to happen?" "Well, we wanted something to happen, but not like this." "Honey, you haven't told me anything yet. Just tell me." Okay. It started about a month ago when you were on your last trip to Boston. I was going to visit Mom during lunch, and as I approached, I saw a Tesla pulling into your garage, which was strange. I didn't recognize the car and didn't know who it could be. From the street, I saw that the lights were on in the house, and by the way the shadows were moving, I could tell someone was going to the garage. I called Mom on her mobile, but she didn't answer. I waited a few more minutes and called her again. When she answered, I asked if she was home, and she said she was still at work and would talk to me later. Obviously, I suspected she was lying, so I hung up and watched the house a little longer, wondering what to do. After some time, I moved my car out of sight and sneaked up to peek into the garage window. Mom's car was there along with the Tesla. I was furious. I went back to my car, called Mike, and told him what I had seen. I wanted to know who was with Mom. Enraged, I spent the first 6 hours waiting for him to leave, and then Mike came and watched until he left at 7 a.m. the next day. Mike followed him to work in a big office building in Cherry Creek. Went in a few minutes later and asked the security guard if he knew the man who had just entered. The guard gave Mike his name, and Mike called me. We didn't know what to do. I called Mom the next morning, upset that she hadn't answered my call, and since then, I've been cold towards her. During your last trip, we kept watch again, and the same thing happened. So, Mike and I decided to do something about it. Mike intervened. I was there when you checked the smoke detectors a few weeks ago, and when I saw the detector in the garage, I had an idea that seemed funny at the time. I guess it's not funny anymore. We were afraid to tell you because we knew you would want to catch them in the act and probably kill the bastard, and possibly end up killing Mom too, accidentally or intentionally, and you'd end up in jail. We didn't want that. We wanted to find a way to unsettle them and embarrass them. I suggested to Jamie that we sneak into the garage around midnight and create one of those unexpected sparks that are known to happen with electric cars from time to time, to create enough smoke to set off the alarm. Since the smoke detectors were in good working order, I didn't think anything would happen except the fire department showing up. I guess that means you didn't know there was a heat detector in the garage, not a smoke detector, said Tyler. Mike had a surprised look on his face. Oh crap, that's why the alarm took so long to go off. Tyler shook his head. Jamie intervened. He thought the need for the fire department to come would be embarrassing, but that wasn't enough, so I also kind of intervened. Tyler looked stunned as he began to grasp the various implications of what his children had told him. He asked, "It looks like my marriage has gone up in flames. Is our house intact?" Jamie replied, "What? Oh yes. Well, for the most part." "Oh God." I visited the house after Mom left for work both times, and each time one of Mom's Magnum wine bottles was in the trash. I know she likes to keep the bottle chilled most of the time, so it seemed like a perfect opportunity to exacerbate their embarrassment. These days, it's very easy to buy Viagra or its equivalent online, so I ordered some. I'm studying to be a pharmacist, and with my chemistry degree, it wasn't hard to turn the pills into a liquid. Tyler interjected, "You didn't do that." "I'm afraid I did. Yesterday afternoon, I snuck into the house. I checked the wine fridge, and Mom had already opened her Magnum bottle, sealed it, and put it back. It turned out that only a glass or two was missing, so I poured in my mixture, stirred it, and put it back, making sure not to leave any traces. We thought they would have to rush out of the house when the fire brigade arrived, and he wouldn't be able to hide his size, which would expose her and her lover in front of all the neighbors." It was Mike's turn to speak. "Just before midnight, I crawled through the garage window, which I had opened beforehand. It took some time, but by using the car's charging port and some tools, I was able to create an arc that made the metal around that area get hot. I don't know if his car was faulty or something, but suddenly there was a shower of sparks. I knew it would trigger the smoke alarm, or at least I thought so, and I got out of there as quickly as I could. Apparently, after I left, the battery caught fire. I think that's what happened because, before the firefighters could get there, not only his car but also Mom's car was on fire. By that time, the alarm in the house had gone crazy, and the whole neighborhood could hear it." Jamie said, "You know how Mom gets when she's upset. It's like her brain just shuts off. That's where the story gets interesting." "Even more interesting? More interesting than my wife cheating on me and my house burning down?" Jamie continued, "We told you the house didn't burn down." "Oh, great. Anyway, in the few minutes I was allowed to talk to Mom this morning, she told me she jumped out of bed when she heard the alarm. She shook her lover, Eric, but he wouldn't wake up. She knew he had drunk a lot and couldn't wake him. She thought he was dead and went into a panic. She called 911 from the home phone and started screaming, 'Fire! Call an ambulance.' Then she grabbed him by the ankles and started dragging him from the bedroom to the exit, not realizing or thinking about the fact that they were both stark naked. He was too heavy for her to carry down the stairs, so she kept dragging him. Again, she wasn't thinking, so he was lying face down. Remember that nail at the entrance to your bedroom that popped up enough to catch one of my socks a few months ago when I was visiting? Well, it looks like you either didn't hammer it down or it popped back up, because guess what? Mom dragged Eric, and he was heavy enough. Or the nail popped up even more, and it caught him. Here's where all that Viagra he drank with the wine comes into play. Not only did the carpet nail cut his groin, but he was also hard, and the nail cut him there, as well as all along his stomach and face. Since the house was quite dark and he was unconscious, Mom didn't realize this and kept dragging him down the stairs. Bump, 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 down the steps. I almost feel sorry for the guy. In addition to his 3-foot scratch, which was bleeding profusely from his groin, he had carpet burns from his groin to his nose, which must have burst open when he fell off the bottom step onto the tile floor in the kitchen. Wham! I'm sure being dragged across the tiles to the front door wasn't very pleasant either, especially when his head bounced over the threshold, hit the concrete porch, and rolled down the steps to the sidewalk. Bump, bump, wham. It looks like he has road rash and a terrible wound on his face. Tyler didn't feel too bad about it somehow. Mike took over the story. The home alarm must have woken up the other neighbors because it seems there were quite a few spectators when Mom dragged her lover, both of them stark naked, out the front door in full view of everyone. Timothy from across the street even recorded the scene on his phone and sent it to me. Here, take a look. Tyler couldn't believe what he was seeing. On Mike's phone was a video of Rebecca, naked, backing out of the front of the house, and sure enough, Eric's head was bouncing off the concrete as he was dragged down the steps by Rebecca. Either her adrenaline was through the roof, or she was stronger than he had thought. The ambulance and fire department arrived right after that. He watched as the crews rushed into the house to open the garage door and started spraying everything in and around the garage with hoses. The paramedics approached his naked wife with an emergency blanket to cover her and then turned Eric over. His bleeding tool was still hard and swinging for all to see. Tyler could say that he won in comparison with her lover. Phew. Mike told him. Apparently, his electric car had a device that sent an alert to his home phone when something strange happened with the car. Apparently, Eric's wife, Francine, got the message and, seeing that her husband's car was at someone's house and not at the airport where it was supposed to be, rushed over to investigate. Continuing to watch, Tyler saw that they couldn't bring Eric to consciousness. He was alive but unconscious. They brought a stretcher from the ambulance, but before they could strap him in, Francine appeared and flipped it over, causing Eric to fall face first onto the sidewalk. He would need more than a few stitches to deal with this new cut on his head. Should he feel sorry for him? Tyler couldn't recall ever seeing anyone so angry. Francine landed several good blows to Eric's groin before they could pull her away, still kicking. When they put him back on the stretcher, his tool, still bleeding, now looked crooked, which it hadn't a few minutes earlier. Tyler wondered if Eric had woken up when they tried to fix that. He hoped so. Rebecca stood in horror as at least a dozen or so socially educated neighbors watched the unfolding tragicomedy. Francine lunged at Rebecca, but instead of hitting her, she yanked off the blanket, leaving Rebecca naked again for at least a minute until another blanket was found. Seeing his wife naked on their front lawn, Tyler thought, "Damn, I'm going to miss those breasts." However, the neighbors certainly didn't miss either them or her landing strip in the groin area. It's safe to say that her grooming habits were no longer, a private matter. Shame. When the police arrived, the flames seemed mostly under control, except for Eric's car, which was still sparking and smoldering. Francine, practically foaming at the mouth, was yelling at the police to arrest Rebecca. On what charge? No one knew, but an officer led Rebecca, clearly shaken, to the back seat of the patrol car just to keep her away from Francine and the onlookers. Jamie said, "We knew that Eric was married to Francine, but we didn't know she was the district attorney's daughter. It seems she or he had enough pull to get Mom taken to the station and put in an interrogation room for the rest of the night, dressed only in that blanket. They released her around 6 a.m. when she tried to call you, but you didn't answer. And some people say that God isn't merciful," Tyler thought. The problem is that because Eric didn't wake up immediately, they did a toxicology report on him, and the only strange thing they found was trace amounts of Viagra. When his wife heard this, she was furious because he has a bad heart and would never have taken something like that. At least, that's what she said. The medics said it was a good thing the fire happened because it meant he got to the hospital quickly enough for them to prevent him from slipping into a coma. Otherwise, it could have been really bad. Tyler asked, "Even worse?" Mike intervened. The police took Mom back to the interrogation room, and this morning the officers came to the house to try to collect some evidence, but the firefighters had knocked the bottle and glasses onto the floor during the fire, breaking them. With all the water, the destruction of the bottles, and the remnants of the wine, there is no uncontaminated evidence left to collect. I went there earlier, and the only thing the police saw was a bloody trail going down the steps and out the door. I suspect they're just grilling Mom in the interrogation room right now. Everyone thinks Eric took the Viagra, although he wasn't supposed to, and without any evidence, I'd be surprised if they hold Mom much longer. Besides, they managed to pull the Tesla out of the garage. This morning, Mom and Francine were all over the news. It wasn't very pleasant. Tyler asked, "Where's your mother now?" Jamie said, "She's still at the police station. They said they'd call us when we can come and get her." "I'm so sorry, Dad. We should have just told you instead of trying to get back at her. We were so angry and only made a bad situation worse." While his kids looked scared, a smile began to slowly spread across Tyler's face. He stood up and said, "I appreciate what you guys tried to do, really. It means a lot to me. Honestly, I don't think you made things worse. Given all the circumstances, I think it turned out pretty well. I'm going home now. Your mother will need you both. I'll let you decide who will pick her up. It won't be me." They understood. On the way home, Tyler stopped by the bank and transferred half of their accounts into a new account in his name only. He would take care of the rest of the finances later this evening or tomorrow. He stopped at the local market and picked up some garbage bags to take his clothes to the dry cleaners, as he suspected everything in the house now smelled of smoke. Approaching the house, He didn't pay much attention to the fire damage. Instead, the bloody trail across the porch and down the steps was clearly visible. He smiled. Entering the front door, which was closed but not locked, the bloody trail continued up the steps. He chuckled. Part of the kitchen leading to the garage looked like a war zone. Ignoring the blood, he went to the bedroom and packed all his clothes into bags to take to the dry cleaner. His insurance company would get the bill. He noticed the bed was unmade, and the thought saddened him for a moment, but only for a moment. He knew what he was going to do. Divorcing that woman was the obvious starting point. Separating finances, finding an apartment, traveling more, and using his newfound free time to spend more time with the kids and have a lot more fun. He wondered if Mike could send him the video so he could forward it to the local news stations. Rebecca's volunteer organizations would surely be proud that one of their board members would boost their visibility so much. As he loaded the last bag into his car, a police car pulled up. They asked for some identification. Hearing about what had happened, and possibly even having been there earlier or seen the video, one of the officers looked embarrassed but still asked, "Are you going to be okay?" All the events of the day played over and over in Tyler's head like one of those old-fashioned wheels people spun on game shows. When the wheel in his head stopped at Veronica's business card, a broad smile spread across Tyler's face. "I'm going to be just fine, officer. Rest assured, I'm going to be just fine." Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.